On behalf of the Planning Committee, guided by Becky Ryder of Keeneland, and on behalf of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County Government family, facilitated by Keith Lovin, I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this unveiling of our interpretive panels, and also to view these beautiful pieces of art. As you will see, these interpretive panels pay honor to Isaac and Lucy Murphy and many others whose Black lives mattered so much in making our great city of Lexington the horse capital of the world. Now, part of my task as MC in this opening is to do recognitions. Now, if you were here last year at the groundbreaking, we recognized and thanked a lot of people. So we don't really need to duplicate that so much this year. But I do want to begin by recognizing a few people who very seldom get invited or recognized at such events. I want to recognize and express our collective gratitude to the men and women who came to this place for several months. They did excavation of the soil, they poured the concrete footers, they laid the stone walls, they ran the plumbing, the wiring, planted trees and flowers, and forged these signs. I was here one day late last fall. It was cold, it was snowing, and there were two women over here on their knees planting flowers, trying to get the flowers in before winter. So can you join me in giving these unsung heroes a round of applause? Next, if I can, I want to recognize and say thank you to my dear friend, Brother Bruce Mundy. Brother Bruce, where are you? Thank you. Now, 9 years ago, about where he's sitting at now, Brother Bruce and I stood right here with our maps and the Frank and Mary Borries book and research notes, and concluded that Isaac Murphy's house was right here on this site. Not across the street, right here. Then we left from here and we went down to our favorite watering hole, 3rd Street stuff, and came up with the name and devised the concept that we see here today. Then next we delivered, thank you. Then next we delivered this vision to Leadership Lexington and said, here is the project you've been looking for as a service project. Now, we thought they had some money and could fund this in a few months. We weren't quite right. But we have joined together over the last 9 years with many other organizations to bring into fruition, to bring those dreams, those visions into reality. And we thank all the different organizations, individuals who've played a role over this time. So now, would we all again join me in a round of applause to thank an unsung hero, Brother Bruce Mundy. Now next, I would like to acknowledge the artists and art pieces, those here presently and those yet to come. They're on their way. They're here in this art garden. We have, as you see here, a piece of art here, one back over here, one by the artist Gordon Gildersleeve. Gordon, are you here? Thank you, Gordon. And also Kiptu Tarus, one of the artists. Now also, there's some art that's on the way, but we need some funding. Those art pieces are art being done by the Bocek family from California. And is Andy Light here? He will be fabricating the metal, this piece over here. We're also waiting for funding for an art piece, a collaboration with Gary Bibbs and LaVon Williams, and we hope as well to get funding for an artist from Dayton named Bing Davis. Now, these art panels that you see here, these historical panels, were designed by Louis Guida. I saw Louis here a minute ago. Thank you, Louis, and his team of designers. These images were fabricated by Howard Stovall. Used to be called Signs Now. I think it's called Image 360. So we want to thank Howard for his work in getting these to us for today's gathering. We're also joined by the, as you see behind us here, the Mustang Troupe. When we have events here, we place a call and they're always here. So thank you to the Mustang Troops. So again, we wish to thank all of our supporters, individuals, organizations who have been a part of this 9-year journey. And a big applause, if we can, for these students here from William Wells Brown Elementary School. Now, I want to introduce, again, two distinguished members of our community and local government. That's Vice Mayor Steve Kay and Councilman James Brown, who bring words of welcome on behalf of our urban county government. Steve?
Thank you, Jim, and good afternoon to everybody. It is a beautiful afternoon. Before I actually read a few remarks, I want to convey from Mayor Gray his regret that he could not be here. He had a death in the family. He is out of town at a funeral, and he asked me if I would fill in for him. I also want to, on my own account, say that I'm always happy to fill in for the mayor, and I'm always happy to do these ceremonial duties, but this is especially meaningful for me because this is my neighborhood, this is my district. I've lived in this area for 35 years. I go by here every day. I've seen what can be done, and on a very personal level, it's just exciting to see this happening. Having said that, I also want to recognize Thomas Tolliver, who is right now greeting people over there. Thomas prepared these remarks. I read them over, the mayor's read them over. They are everything that I would have done had I had a month to do all the research. So I usually do not read a speech. I usually do not read prepared remarks. But if the traffic will bear it, and if you will, I want to share with you the research and the thinking that Thomas has done about this special day. During the groundbreaking ceremony for this art garden, one of the speakers said, "Isaac Murphy is to Lexington what Muhammad Ali is to Louisville." Both were athletes who reached the pinnacle of their respective sport. The difference, the speaker said that day, is that Louisville celebrates the accomplishments of Muhammad Ali. It gives me great pleasure to stand here today and say that in Lexington, we now finally celebrate the accomplishments of Isaac Murphy. In fact, I marvel at how far we have come in 15 months since that groundbreaking ceremony in July 2014. What was just an unused plot of grass has become a beautiful park where we honor the accomplishments of not only Isaac Murphy, who rose to national prominence during a racing career that spanned 2 decades, but the many other black horsemen whose contributions to racing had for too long been overlooked. from what started as a grassroots effort several years ago by a group of motivated citizens who wanted to honor Murphy, the first jockey to win 3 Kentucky Derbies, has mushroomed into such a formative movement that we see some of our city's most notable and respected institutions coming on board and bringing with them their vast resources. How remarkable to see the Keeneland Library, the Kentucky Horse Park, and the Fayette County Public Schools, each a community pillar in their own right, at the table with these grassroots organizers who could only dream of a day like today. Just like they celebrate Muhammad Ali in Louisville, today in Lexington we celebrate Isaac Murphy, his personal story, and his place in Kentucky horse racing lore. Until a few short years ago, most Lexingtonians knew little or nothing about Isaac Murphy and the other black jockeys who in the late 1800s found success in the saddle. But because of the tireless effort of many members, past and present, of the Isaac Murphy Memorial Art Garden Board and its allies, we have this site, this outdoor classroom to teach and educate its visitors of a history that most textbooks overlook. And I also want to welcome all of the students here. It's great to see you all for this event. So what history, you might ask? How about the history of Oliver Lewis, a Lexington native and the winning jockey in the very first Kentucky Derby in 1875, and that of James Jimmy Wingfield, who won the Kentucky Derby in 1901 and 1902, and today, more than 100 years later, remains the last black jockey to win horse racing's premier race. In fact, black jockeys account for 16 of the Derby's first 28 winners. Thankfully, this history and more is told on the handsome storyboards that will be officially unveiled today. The story of these pioneering jockeys resonates well beyond Lexington and beyond Kentucky. That's evidenced by Pelham McDaniels, a history professor in Atlanta, Georgia, who was so fascinated by Isaac Murphy's story that he produced a 500-page biography, The Prince of Jockeys. It's a pleasure to have Pelham with us today as we celebrate Isaac Murphy, who, by the age of 15, was winning races at the Kentucky Association track just a stone's throw from where we stand today. Not only do I commend Pelham and the Isaac Murphy Board for their work to make this forgotten history known, but I tip my hat to Keeneland, the Kentucky Horse Park, Fayette County Public Schools, the Lyric Theater, Race for Education, the UK History Department, and the many others who believe, as I do, and I believe as we all do, that this part of Lexington's history needs to be told and celebrated. That so many different institutions have come to embrace this effort is such a positive statement about our city. How remarkable it is that the Legacy Trail, when completed, will link this garden, the spot where Isaac Murphy lived and died, to the Kentucky Horse Park, where Murphy is now buried. Just as Keeneland and the Horse Park have become major tourist attractions in Lexington, it is my hope that this small park will become a must-see destination for anyone interested in exploring Lexington's rich, thoroughbred racing history. It adds another beautiful color to our already colorful palette. In concluding, let me thank again all those who have worked so hard to bring forward the rich and complete history of Lexington, including bringing the IMAG from a visionary proposal to the wonderful reality we are here today to celebrate. Thank you.
Councilman Brown.
Good afternoon. I'm Councilman James Brown. It's my pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. This is an exciting time for Lexington, and this is an exciting, eventful week for the First District, full of learning, history, and recognition. I would like to recognize the East End residents and neighborhood, the Bluegrass Community Foundation, the IMAG Board, LFUCG, and everyone involved in making this Isaac Memorial Art Garden a reality. There's been a lot of hard work, but there's still a lot of hard work ahead of us. One is completing the Legacy Trail that will connect this beautiful art garden to the rest of the community. Fundraising to help fund the permanent art pieces that are going to be displayed in this art garden. I would also like to thank Dr. Pelham McDaniel for his passion and his dedication to Isaac Murphy in the telling of his story to our community and to our city. And for those that don't know, I guess it's his city as well, since he was presented with the key to the city earlier this week. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today and supporting this effort and supporting the Isaac Memorial Art Garden. Thank you.
To provide scholarships and educational opportunities for families of people that work on horse farms and at the racetrack. We decided to do this because most of the people who actually work day to day on the farms and at the racetrack work very long hours and make very little money, and there's not a lot of money left for education, but they do this because of their love of the horse, which is something that was very important to many of the people involved in our organization. We wanted to recognize how hard they work and how committed they were to the industry, and to really recognize their contribution to the racing industry and what they do on a daily basis. Over the years, our program has expanded to provide more than just scholarships. We provide counseling and academic development programs for young people, and we've also opened our arms to more people than just folks in the racing industry and horse farms, but also to all young people in the community who are struggling with academic challenges and financial need. We've been able to provide these services for over a decade because we have a very wonderful board who are really committed to helping us meet the challenges of our community. And we have one very generous donor who came to us a couple years ago and said that he really felt that the recognition for African Americans in our industry was not really recognized, and there wasn't any kind of effort to celebrate those individuals, and we talked about doing a scholarship for an African American student. And it was about the same time that there was talk in the community about developing this garden, and we thought memorializing Isaac Murphy through a scholarship program would be a good way to introduce people to his name and also to find young people who might honor his legacy. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Barry Irwin. He's the president of Team Valor International. He's an author. He's been one of our very first board members, the chairman of our organization, and a leader and supporter of our organization for many years. Mr. Barry Irwin.
Thank you very much. How many people here saw the movie Seabiscuit? Raise your hand. Okay, unbeknownst to most of you, the world premiere of that movie was held in Louisville, and the sponsor for it was the Race for Education. One of my racing partners was co-producer, and we raised over $150,000 from that event, which was one of the ways we got going. Plus, a lot of owners like me contribute either 1 or 2% of the money that their horses win every year. And in the year 2011, we had a horse named Animal Kingdom who won the Kentucky Derby. We took 1% of that purse, which was quite a big purse. It was like $1.8 million. And then my wife and I donated an additional 1%, and I gave that money to Elizabeth, and I said, figure out what's the best use of this. And it's Elizabeth that came up with the idea for the Isaac Murphy Scholarship. And we not only have one for Isaac Murphy, which is earmarked towards African American students, but we have one for Hispanic students named after the jockey that rode Animal Kingdom, a fellow by the name of Johnny Velasquez. And the reason that Isaac Murphy was selected was not just because he was a famous black participant in horse racing, but because of what he stood for. Isaac Murphy stood for integrity, honesty, scholarship, fair play, loyalty, and dedication to horse racing. He was a superstar in an era that was totally dominated by black horsemen and black trainers. Unlike professional baseball, which had a separate Negro league, as they called it, racing was not like that. Racing before the turn of the century and after was completely dominated by top black trainers and top black jockeys, and white men relied upon the horsemanship and the integrity of these trainers and jockeys for their tip-top horses. And then as the Jim Crow era came, the black men were relegated from being the guys that put the saddles on the back and who rode in those saddles, and they became grooms and hot walkers. And it's gotten to a point today where you're hard pressed to even find an African American in the stable area of a racetrack, and the number of actual riders or trainers you can count on the fingers of one hand. If you name any sport in America, whether it's football, basketball, track and field, swimming, golf, gymnastics, hockey, or baseball, the level of skill and knowledge today outstrips anything from a couple of decades ago to a century ago. But that is not the case in horse racing. The guys that rode in the Isaac Murphy area, Jimmy Wingfield, and those trainers, they knew more about horses and horse racing and what it took to get them to run than any participants in racing today in America. It's important to recognize the impact that Isaac Murphy had on horse racing and the pride that he instilled in the black community, especially right here in the Bluegrass. And equally important to keep alive the legacy of the quality of the horsemanship that Mr. Murphy brought to this athletic discipline. I hope that in some small way the Isaac Murphy Scholarship can keep alive this tradition. Thank you.
Okay, if you can't read this far up, this is a check for $20,000.
So before we begin, I wanted to say a couple things just to the group. We wanted to first of all say thank you so much for your support. This is phenomenal. I remember 15 years ago when I came to Lexington looking for Isaac Murphy and meeting a number of you and just imagining what it would be to have one day people to really embrace this idea of their local history, of the people that have come from this space, this city, and their contributions, to have you all come together. And this is more than I could have ever imagined. I was trying to write a book. On top of that, the book turned out to be the basis for the exhibit that's at the Lyric Theater that the children have enjoyed. But also the book is also going to be a feature film now. So The Prince of Jockeys is going to be a movie. So I just want to say thank you all, because this is, I think, the beginning of something that we've been discussing for quite a long time. To be in this space, again, we were here in April to have another conversation about Isaac Murphy. But to have all of you here, to have the students here who had a chance to walk through the museum, to have all of these community leaders here to, really participate in such a wonderful event is outstanding. The one thing I do want to share with you, and this is directed at the UK students and the young folks from William Wells Brown, and that is that, the book I wrote on Isaac Murphy is a biography, and university professors rarely get into the community to do this kind of work. Our charge is generally to write books and to educate on university campuses. My point is that if you want to have a life where your work has an impact, always think about community. Always think about the people who you should impact with your work. You should always pursue this idea of education, inspiration, and also try to empower people with your work. So I just want to leave that as a nugget for you to understand that, although I'm at a university, it does not absolve me from being responsible to the communities within which I live. So I just want to give you that information because I think it's important. So without further ado, we're going to talk with the 10-year-old Isaac Murphy we have up here. So I'm going to give David a little time to make his transformation. And so, Isaac, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I can. Like I said, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to start off telling about myself. My name is David Lee. I am 8 years old. I am going to be in this play called I Dedicate This Ride. It will be by Frank X. Walker and put together by the Message Theater. we will have it Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. We'd really like you to come out. And so I would like to share the experience of Isaac Murphy. It's been a pleasure working with all these people, Miss Nettie, Mr. Keith, my mom, and Mr. Patrick, Grandma, and yeah, Miss
See back there?
Miss Frida.
Okay.
Miss Frida.
We got it. Patrick.
And Mr. Patrick.
So hold right here. Hold right
Okay.
here. There we go.
It's been a pleasure to just experience and see what a great jockey he was, and see what wonderful things that he did, and how he became the best. This is also great history, because this is good for people to learn, because one day they could become maybe one of the best in the world. And as Mr. Demetrius, he said, I rocked. He said I was about the only one who didn't mess up in the play today. So yeah, like I said, it's just a pleasure to be here today. And thank you, and it's a pleasure, and thank you. Mr. Patrick again, Mr. Patrick.
So I'm going to ask him just a few questions real quick. So David, can you tell me when you are playing Isaac Murphy, and kind of showing the audience the kind of person he is, what kind of character did Isaac Murphy have?
He had a strong, serious character, and he was just ready to ride.
Was he an honest person?
Yeah, yes, he was. He was a good man. He wasn't an excellent man. That's no fair comparison, like Miss Nettie says in the play. But yes, he was a good man. He was true, honest.
What lessons can we take from looking at Isaac Murphy's example? What kind of lessons can all of us take from his example?
We can take the example that we can become one of the best people in the world, and go out and really show ourselves. And we become a jockey, we become anything, but it just really shows that we can become the best, just like him.
There's nothing wrong with becoming the best. So David, thank you, and we all look forward to seeing him. And I dedicate this ride. Thank you. Don't forget who?
Mr. Patrick. Also for a little surprise, a little sneak peek that I wanted to tell y'all. Wanted to do a little sneak peek of my part from the play. Mom. Okay. Huh? American Isaac Burns, sir. Me and my granddaddy, Green Murphy, live at the edge of town. We come to Lexington after my daddy joined up with the union. She did laundry for white folks like Mr. Owings. I was carrying a bundle of clothes when I met him. Which one of these horses is a thoroughbred? Do they really stand up, or do they stay up all night? What makes them go so fast? What do they like to eat? What do I get to ride?
Completed would be an outdoor classroom, and that is demonstrated by your presence here today. We are certainly having a lesson. We are being taught a lesson. I want to say a brief word about the panels, and I invite you to, before you leave, to take time to look at the panels, read the text on them, and I think you will be quite impressed, as I was. If I can find my notes. First off, the very large panel that stands where the bus is parked is what we call the Isaac Murphy Memorial Art Garden Trailhead panel. It is a trailhead for the Legacy Trail, and that panel describes the ascent of the African American jockey and how horse racing, popular before the Civil War, it surged after the Civil War. And black jockeys with a heritage of grooming and training and riding horses in Africa were well prepared as freemen to take advantage of racing's new popularity. Top black riders were athletic stars covered by the New York Times and the New York Herald and other newspapers. This panel also describes the mechanisms behind the demise and disappearance of the black jockeys. And this panel also has, please take a look at it, has the pictures of 10 of the 12 black jockeys who have won the Kentucky Derby and the names of many other black horsemen, including people like Oscar Dishman, a relatively recent horseman. And we're proud today to have Oscar Dishman's daughter in the house with us today. Marilyn Dishman, stand up and be acknowledged. So what we're talking about today is not just ancient history, but recent history as well. Panel 2, right here to my left, is the, right here behind me is the Isaac Burns Murphy panel. And this is a biography panel that tells of Isaac's rise in prominence over his 2 decades of racing. The art on this piece of this panel is quite interesting because it is a photograph of the 1980 race, which was a what do you call it, a photo finish that was worn by Isaac, and is quite famous, and you can read about that on this panel. The other panel over here is about Isaac Murphy's house, and that's a fascinating panel, and I want you to please note that it talks about these rocks that are in the ground right here at surface level. Those rocks are from the foundation of Isaac Murphy's house, which stood right there. When we were beginning to build this park, we excavated those stones from his foundation, and when the park was being finished, we brought those stones back and incorporated them into our park. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and that panel tells you about that. Thank you. And lastly, the panel down here by the rain garden, right past the handsome man on the horseback, right, the Mustang Troop. Thank you. Wave your hand. There's a panel back there at the rain garden that talks about how this park came to be and why this site was selected. And I do hope that you will take the time to look at these panels, and you will see why we call this an outdoor classroom. And with that is the unveiling, if I may use that term, of the interpretive panels at the Isaac Murphy Art Garden. I might add, these panels that you see here today are just temporary. The real panels, which will be made of high pressure laminate, will be installed at a later date. But we wanted to have these temporary panels in place for this event today. But come back and see us. Bring your classes, Ms. Musnick, and other young people. Bring your classes and enjoy this outdoor classroom. Thank you.